A court hearing just wrapped up minutes ago for the newly convicted felon Sean Diddy Combs, and his attorneys are no longer trying to fast-track his sentencing. Less than a week ago, a jury convicted the rap mogul on federal charges of transportation to engage in prostitution, but acquitted him on the more serious crimes of racketeering and sex trafficking. After initially hoping to push sentencing up, Combs' lawyers are now asking for October 3rd. Now, that's the same date the judge proposed shortly after the verdict was read. Combs remains in custody after being denied bail, and his spokesperson says after his big win in court, he received a standing ovation from his fellow inmates. Joining us now, trial and defense attorney Misty Marris. Misty, always great to have you. Thank you so much for being here. First, what do you think happened with the defense? Why now propose the date that the judge initially proposed?
Yeah, so initially the defense wanted to move this up, and they had proposed September 22nd. And then in a really short hearing, the defense went back to that October 3rd date. The reason that that happened is likely because the probation department has to sign off on that timeline. The probation department's role in sentencing is actually really important. They prepare a report, which is called a risk assessment, and make a recommendation about what the sentence should be. And it's something that the judge takes into consideration. So that risk assessment takes a bit of time for the probation department to put together, usually about 11 weeks. And if you do that calculation, that brings you right up to about October 3rd. So my guess is that the probation department pushed back a little bit on that expedited timeline.
And on the day of the verdict, his lawyers, Sean Diddy Combs' lawyers, said they wanted the process, expedited. And you're talking about why this would change. It's likely because the parole has to sign off. Is that probably the likeliest reason they would change their mind?
It probably is, and I think they wanted it expedited because, remember, they asked for bail. They asked for Combs to have the opportunity to serve on house arrest up until the sentencing. They've also, in another submission to the court, have said he should not be serving this time in between the verdict, where he was acquitted on the more serious charges, and the sentencing at the Metropolitan Detention Center, known to be one of the harshest prisons in the federal system, that he should actually go to a prison with more moderate security for less violent offenders. So they've made that argument. And I think that's why they wanted to expedite this, because they wanted to see if they could get Combs some relief in some form. But I do think that probation report, the defense wants that too, because the sentence is going to be in the judge's discretion. Prosecutors have already said they're going to ask for more time than the guidelines, the federal guidelines, something the judges pay attention to. What does a sentence look like for an individual that was convicted of these crimes? Prosecutors are going to ask for something harsher, whereas the defense is asking for something on the lower end. So this risk assessment report is likely to be important to both sides, the defense included, and I think that's why we saw this pivot today.
And Misty, how much time are we talking about? What amount of time could he face?
So we actually got a significant preview from the bail arguments. Remember, both sides submitted papers to the judge. They submitted their arguments, and the defense said that pursuant to the federal guidelines, this would be about 2 years. That's the type of sentence we should be looking at with what's called time served, meaning the time that he's been behind bars would cut against that. So if that's what ends up happening, not much longer than he's already served would he still be incarcerated. Now, prosecutors did what they called a rough calculation, and they said the lowest amount of time that he should be serving is about 5 years, but they intend to ask for what's called an upward departure. That means they want to ask for something even more calculus, and likely to be something closer to what the maximum is, which would be 10 years per conviction, so 20 years total. We're likely to see something, I think, if I had to use my crystal ball and predict, something within those guidelines between that 2 and that 5. Again, that's within the judge's discretion, and that probation report, that's going to give us a lot of information about where the judge may land. The judges do tend to take that report into consideration significantly when making their determination.
And just, continuing with this crystal ball of yours, did you hear anything during this particular hearing that could preview what we might see at sentencing? Any indication?
Well, we know that they set a schedule for not only the probation report and when that's going to come out, but gives the defense the time to actually contest what might be in there. Remember, everything is about these federal sentencing guidelines. The prosecution is saying that these are crimes of violence. The defense has argued that he was actually acquitted of the crimes that relate to force, fraud, and coercion and racketeering. So that's going to be the critical question. And those are going to be the arguments that we can preview. My crystal ball, sometimes it's a little rusty, but a lot of times we can predict at least what the arguments are going to be. That it's really going to be all about what do we look at in criminal justice? We look at rehabilitation, punishment, and deterrence. Those are the three tenets of the criminal justice system when it comes to punishment. So we're going to see those arguments coming, mitigating factors from the defense, aggravating factors from the prosecution.
All right, Misty Marris, always great to have you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.